Welcome to the Tech Ranch, live and local here on Super Talk 1270. The latest gadgets, online security, websites and apps, social media, and so much more. How can technology help you? Let's find out. It's time for the Tech Ranch on Super Talk 1270.
From our studios in beautiful Mandan, North Dakota, along the mighty Missouri River, here is your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
So why have the prices for computers, tablets fallen so much in recent years?
Why?
Marv Dorner from Be Busy Consulting is in studio, and we'll be explaining why this is not a good thing. If you've recently, it is Monday, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I didn't do my vocal exercises beforehand. I should do that, actually. Yeah. So anyway, but if you've recently purchased a computer or tablet, whatever, you'll need to stay on with us and hear about this because it really isn't a good thing why prices have been falling. Net neutrality has been in the big news lately.
Oh, yeah.
So what is it, and how will the new FCC regs change your internet experience? Miss Metaverse will be here later to discuss that and much more. And, of course, at the control panel, producer extraordinaire, Mr. Jim Walsh.
I love those bonbons you brought in.
You like those, huh?
They are good.
Yeah. You're going to have a sugar coma pretty soon.
Oh,
though.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'll be in a diabetic shock thing mode here.
And, of course, like I said, in studio, Mr. Marv Dorner. How you doing?
Good.
So, of course, we're all mourning the big news. I think Friday, Mr. Leonard Nimoy passed away.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Jim,
Live long and prosper.
are you a Star Trek or Star Wars guy?
I'm Trek. I'm
okay.
definitely Trek.
How about you, Marv?
Star Wars,
All right.
unfortunately.
All right. Well, I wouldn't say that's unfortunate enough.
For the
but,
discussion.
Yes, yeah.
unfortunately, yes.
But I'm assuming you were probably a Spock fan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the new movies are a lot more fun.
Yep, yeah,
they
absolutely. And I agree, And Nimoy, of course, just a social icon, I guess you could say. I never met him personally, but I was at a couple of Star Trek conventions where he was at. We went to the 50th anniversary of Star Trek a couple of years ago,
Really?
and he was there. In fact, that was his last public appearance.
Okay.
Was at that, and it was fun to have him get up on the stage. He was telling us all kinds of stories, including one about Montana, that if I had time, I would share that. I may have to post the story, but it was absolutely hilarious what had happened to him in Montana back in the day. So.
I worked with a guy many years ago. I was in Indiana, Lafayette, Indiana, and I worked with a guy whose other job, he did radio part-time, his full-time job was organizing Star Trek conventions.
Really?
That's what he did for a living. And in that capacity, he knew all the Star Trek people. He said Nimoy was fantastic. He was just a total gentleman.
Yeah, he really was.
Very classy guy,
Yep.
and always great with the fans.
Yeah.
And
He loved his role.
Yeah, very
with that. He
intelligent.
really did, yeah.
Well, he did later. I mean, didn't he write a book in the 80s that said, "I'm not Spock"?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
He was over it.
Yep.
And just tired of it. But
Yep.
then in the 90s, "I Am Spock" was his
Yeah,
next
he
book.
wrote a book. He
Yep.
said, "Yeah, okay, I'm Spock."
Yeah, I think Shatner went through that for a while too.
Yeah.
That he hated the Captain Kirk thing, but after a while, I think you have to they were smart enough to embrace what made them.
He finally developed a sense of humor about it.
He
all.
did. Yeah.
Probably checked his bank account every once in a while.
Yeah, he
Exactly.
went,
Trek
"Whoa."
thing's not so
It's
bad.
not so bad. Yeah, exactly. So, does Star Wars? Do they have conventions like Star Trek?
They do, but I think they're kind of melded into it, especially now that they're owned by Disney. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm sure
interesting.
that'll really kind of take that off. But I don't follow that or go to them. But I think with the Comic Cons and that sort of thing, I think they're really grouped in with that.
Okay.
And all the dress up and all that.
Well, that's
that
what I
happens,
probably
so.
found most interesting when we went to the Star Trek convention, especially the 50th anniversary. Alice and I, it was in Las Vegas, and we just dressed normal, it was just warm weather or whatever, right? And we show up, and everybody else is wearing just crazy stuff, And probably the most interesting thing that happened to me is that I've never been able to do the live long and prosper thing. All right, Jim can
Really?
do
You
it.
can?
Yeah, I
Marv
can
can
do
you?
it.
Oh, you guys, you suck. That's all I'm going to say. I've
And I'm
never
not
been able
Jewish,
to do it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So anyway, of course, Alice can do this too, and I'm trying to do this, and these couple of younger ladies came up to me. When I say younger, 3 and 4, okay, dressed up with the Vulcan ears and the whole bit,
Okay.
right? And they've seen that I was struggling with this, so they came up to me and they said, "This is how you do it." And these young, it was just amazing. It was the cutest thing,
That's funny.
But it was fun to see everybody in costume or whatever. And again, Nimoy was fantastic there. And socially, when you think about geeks, he was really the first geek.
Absolutely.
And he kind of brought that forward. So.
Well, he wasn't really a geek himself. He was a hero to the geeks.
Right, exactly, because of the role that exactly. So anyway.
He was the geek Elvis.
We'll have to put together some, you'll have to pull up some stuff in between on the breaks here and see if we can.
Well, maybe that Star Trek. Ever heard the Star Trekkin' song? Star Trekkin' across the universe.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think I heard that one either.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, you have to find it and bring it up. Then that'd be cool. So anyway, we want to talk a little bit about why computer prices have been falling, tablets, whatever. And I know we're going to be pushing up on breaks, so we're going to give you a little bit of a teaser, and then when we come back, we'll really get into it. But Marv, tell me a little bit about why you think computer prices have fallen the last couple of years.
Well, I think you touched on it a little bit. They're not innovating as much anymore. So the price of the components, the price of the internal gear, the cases, the screens, all that stuff has remained pretty consistent.
Right.
So I think the price of that and the R&D has gone. Really has escalated down quickly.
Sure.
It's the price is dropping. But, years ago, just a few years ago, really, they started adding software and other things to the operating system, especially on the Windows side. And all those people are paying licensing to the manufacturers to get their system in there. So that's dropping the price because on a grand scale, they might be paying, only pennies or dollars per machine, but when you're manufacturing millions of them, you're getting your software in front of so many people.
Right.
Is a huge deal, and most people don't know how to get it off, or in some cases you can't get it off, so it's in front of their face all the time.
Exactly, and I know that some things that I have seen actually talks about a lot of computer companies actually make $100 to $150 per machine. Mm-hmm. For this extra software you have on there. And it just drives a lot of people crazy, of course, because you don't know what to do with all of this stuff. And it causes a lot of issues, doesn't it?
It can, because it can take a lot of your computing resources and everything else.
Yeah.
Stuff running in the background that you're never going to use, and unless you know how to turn it off, it's there.
Yeah. All right, after the break, everybody, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, so come on back.
Right now, 19.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
Follow the Guru of Geek at Facebook.com/The Tech Ranch or Twitter at Guru of Geek or TheTechRanch.com. Here again is your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead.
And welcome back to the Tech Ranch, everybody. We're playing a little Star Trek stuff in remembrance of Leonard Nimoy. And in studio, of course, producer extraordinaire Jim Walsh. And sitting next to me here is the owner of Be Busy Consulting, Mr. Marv Dorner. And we're just talking a little bit about why computer prices have fallen. And let's just bring everybody up to speed a little bit about why you think they have fallen.
Well, the big part, we talked about the technology, but really it is the licensing that's being paid by these third-party vendors that are getting their system, their programs onto the operating system or onto the builds of the computers. And in some cases you can't even remove them, but in some cases you can. And it does really help your computer's performance. It does help in some security issues, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here shortly.
We are going to there, yes.
It really started, I think Gateway might have been the first ones that really did it, and this was going back over 10 years.
So, and a lot of it is that, when you buy a new computer, you turn it on, and what they're hoping for is that you're going to start using their software. It's a 30-day trial, 60-day trial, whatever. So it comes prepackaged with, a lot of Microsoft products are usually on there, and those are probably okay. But it gets into the other stuff that you really start to have some problems with. Maybe the antivirus or the malware software that you have in there isn't so good. The games, huge issues with games. And all this stuff gets packaged in there, and they're just, like I said, hoping that you'll use them for the 30 days, get addicted to them, and then you have the opportunity to buy them. And obviously the philosophy works because this has grown over the years. It hasn't diminished. It's actually getting worse. And, of course, when you buy a tablet or a cell phone or a smartphone, oh, my goodness. I mean, you think it's bad on your computers. That's where they really get you is on the tablets and the smartphones.
Yeah, the major manufacturers on the Android side even create just their own front end.
They do.
You don't actually see stock Android ever,
right?
Unless you buy a Google Nexus product,
right?
The Samsungs and the HTCs and Motorola's, they all have their individual front-facing home screens, and that's what you're dealing with. So they've even taken it one step further,
right? And then you throw in, if you buy a phone from AT&T or Verizon or whatever, they even add their own stuff on top of that. So you're getting this multiple stuff on there, and unless you, and we won't get into rooting a phone or whatever, but if you do that, or if you don't do that, you are stuck with all of this adware stuff that you could call on your phone, and you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, and not only does it hurt maybe the security and that sort of thing, but in the case of what you just mentioned, where it's Verizon or AT&T, they have to actually get the build from Google or from whomever, and then mess with it a little bit and put their stuff on. So it actually delays any updates or upgrades to the operating system because they have to make sure it's thoroughly working.
Right.
Because when they dump it out to their folks, they don't want 1 million customer service calls because their phones are breaking and
exactly
and that sort of thing. So it can delay even upgrading your phone.
And this has become such a problem. I'm glad you mentioned Nexus. Why don't you talk a little bit about what Nexus is?
Yeah, Google, kind of got frustrated by this process as well. And if anybody doesn't need money, it's Google. So they don't sell any of this stuff, third-party stuff. And so they're giving you the stock version of Android. It's what they've, I should say they developed. They're developing it now. They actually bought this one, Android, a long time ago.
Right.
But they've taken it over. And now the stock version of Lollipop, which is the latest version of it, is only really available right now on the Google Nexus products. And a few, there's a couple of oddball outliers out there that are selling it, but really it's only Google.
And, just to kind of, when you go buy a smartphone, generally you have a choice between, an iPhone, a Droid, or a Windows phone. I mean, those are the big three choices right now, probably in that order. And Google has, the issue with Androids is that there are hundreds of manufacturers of them, and they range anywhere from really, really cheap stuff to pretty expensive stuff in the same realm as an iPhone. Right. And you literally get what you pay for with an Android. I mean, that's just how it is, you know. If you and the issue I think a lot of times is that people, when they buy cheap Androids, they get mad at the operating system, and the operating system is fine on there. It's just that the machine is so cheap. It's like trying to run Windows 7 on a Windows 98 machine. I'm just giving that you just don't have the oomph, I guess you could say, or the power
to run it.
Exactly. And but a lot of people don't realize this, so they're like, "Oh, I can get a phone for $49 or whatever," and they don't realize that there's just not enough horsepower behind it. So that's the issue. And then you throw in the fact that they throw all this adware and stuff on there, and it makes it even worse. So Google realized this, brought out Nexus, because they see that the one thing that probably is superior to everything else with iPhone is that they don't have any of this stuff.
Right.
And the specs are always the same with iPhones. So you know exactly what you're getting. You pay a premium for it, but you know what you're always getting with it.
Yeah, and that's Apple in general. I mean, they're proprietary hardware, proprietary software, and nothing's left to chance. They control the entire environment.
So that's the biggest things between those. And of course, like I said, Google understands that, and that's why they've announced or are working on the Nexus project, because they want to have that same type of thing. So, all right. So getting into all the bloatware, adware, and whatever else that you get on your computer and tablet when you buy it, tell me a little bit about what security things we have to be concerned with. And this is the big deal here.
Yeah, this is the big one. I think about a week ago, maybe two, it came out that Lenovo had a third party called Superfish running on their system. And it's the lower cost Lenovo products that are getting caught doing this, but it's millions of computers. And the Superfish product is saving just all kinds of personal data and tracking everywhere you go and just tracking everything you do on that computer. And it's funneling it into this big data server that can be harvested and used for advertising and who knows what else. And so Lenovo got kind of shook up about it. And once it got out into the wild, they really started paying the price on social media and through the news. And so they started doing some digging. They fingered Superfish as being the problem. Superfish has said, we had somebody else develop that part of the project. We don't even know it's there. So now they're kicking the can down the road. So it's going to be a long list of trials that are going to come up because of this.
And that's not unusual, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of companies that when you're developing apps or whatever, that they may have a half a dozen companies that have collaborated to make this stuff. But the story behind this is that, you may be buying something reputable. And I would, and I'm even going to throw Facebook into this when you're going to the Facebook page, or whatever. But the issue is that there are so many third-party vendors, third-party suppliers to these things that if you get past the gateway, so let's say Lenovo's like, we'll allow you to put your software on here. It tests fine on here or whatever, and once you get the okay for that, a lot of times they just kind of let you do your own thing.
Yep.
And the same true with Facebook. A lot of people that we have come in and get viruses or whatever from Facebook is because you become a developer for Facebook and you develop something cool. Facebook says, yeah, you guys are pretty good. We'll let you do that. Well, after that, they don't check on you so much anymore.
Right.
And you introduce whatever you want to in there, and it takes a while for Facebook to get caught up with it. And the same thing is happening with Lenovo. And I believe, I'm just making a parallel between software and, internet now and hardware on our computers and software on the computers. But the issue is rampant. And it affects everything that we do with malware and software, whatever. So you have to really be prudent and be careful with the stuff that you put on your computer and what you have on it now.
Yeah, and it's everything fun. That's how they get you.
That's true.
It's games, it's screensavers, it's really cool apps for your phone. It's there was a big deal. Remember the flashlight thing a couple of years ago, where they said so many people had this flashlight app, and it opened up these huge security holes because it was gathering all this personal data, and that's all it takes.
Yep.
But everybody needs a flashlight app because that's their flashlight.
That is their flashlight now. Yep.
Yeah, it's everything that's fun and cool to do on your phone. They know that, and that's what they target as the bad stuff.
So, I know a lot of companies when you buy a computer at a Office Superstore or whatever, they actually have a price now. Mm-hmm. Well, they'll charge you $75 or $100 to get rid of all this stuff. Yeah. Is it something that the average person can do, or what do you think?
For the most part, I think if you just go in and you're looking for things and you should do that in general. Just look at the computer and go to the add remove programs, and if there's stuff you just don't think you need or want, for the most part, you can take almost anything off that operating system. They're not going to put anything in there that's going to be critical. You're not going to remove Windows Explorer by clicking on something. So almost anything in there is removable, and I think if you just start killing apps that you don't need or want, and you see them down in the little taskbar, and you're like, what is that? Just hover over them or click on them. It'll tell you what it is. And if it's not something you need.
So the person, when you buy a computer, should this be one of the first things you do is just go in there and get rid of the stuff? Because you never know what that third-party vendor is doing, right?
I would. And even some of the manufacturers are selling them at a premium now where you can get them ad-free. Microsoft sells computers direct. That are adware free.
Have you noticed the price difference? So let's say you take the same exact model, ad free, and not. What's the price difference there?
In some cases, it'll double. Especially in like the Lenovo, because you're buying a $299 computer. But I think for the most part, you're looking at $200 to $300.
Unbelievable, the price difference there. So anyway, everybody, after the break, Miss Metaverse Katie Aquino will be joining us, and we'll be talking about net neutrality. So come on back.
We come in peace, shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace, shoot to kill, man.
Right now, 19.
Your news leader, weeknights at 6 and 10. Super Talk 1270.
We're back to the Tech Ranch. Stream this program now at supertalk1270.com. Here's your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
And on the phone, joining us from, I'm not sure what the weather's like in New York today, I guess, but joining us from New York, Miss Metaverse Kate Aquino. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Marla?
Doing fine as well. And in studio, we have the tech geezer. Yeah, I had to wake him up a little bit. I had to jab him a little bit. And founder of Be Busy Consulting, Marv Dorner. And we're going to get into a little discussion on net neutrality. So, let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And that means Kate wins Tell us a little bit about net neutrality, Kate. Let's give everybody kind of a background to what we're talking about here.
Sure. So I guess probably back in 2005 was when we really started, I guess everyone started talking about what net neutrality would really mean and whether it should be allowed. And so basically it was a discussion that should companies, some of the biggest internet cable service providers like Verizon or AT&T or Comcast, should they be allowed to essentially charge people different rates for their internet usage, or should it be all open and free? And it became sort of a pretty wild debate, because on one end, you had a lot of the cable companies saying that by having a free and open internet, it was actually going to stifle innovation. And then you have people on the other end who are saying, hey, listen, if you try to control our internet use and say what we can and cannot do on the web and plus charge us different rates for how we use the web, isn't that stifling innovation? So it was very, very heated, and it's pretty interesting.
All right. And Marv, you have anything else you want to add to that?
You know, that kind of covers the basics. I think it's going to be a big discussion. I think even going forward, even after it passes, I think there's still going to be a lot of debate and a lot of the law or whatever was passed by the FCC is pretty vague, I think, in the wording, and so there's going to be open for a lot of interpretation by courts and pundits and politicians and everybody else that's going to get involved, I think.
So let's give people a real world example about what we're talking about. So in the world of Netflix, okay, so Marv, what would be the gain, I guess, to Netflix one way or the other, maybe with the new regulations, or how would net neutrality affect them? Because there's so many people that stream Netflix now, and this is probably one of the Netflix is one of the main reasons why I think this is kind of coming to the forefront, along with other streaming companies.
Well, I think to the consumer, it's a good thing because it's guaranteeing that Comcast or whomever isn't going to either expedite that, for the folks that don't use Netflix, they want to still have a fast internet. But the people who want Netflix definitely want a fast internet because of Netflix. Now, on the other side, the cable companies want to be able to charge a premium to Netflix because it's such a bandwidth use, a huge usage on their network. Right. So they wanted the opportunity to go to Netflix and some of the other folks and say, we need to charge you a little bit more money because of the bandwidth that's being used on the other side. So now the courts are saying, no, you can't do that. And that's where I think, we discussed it a little bit earlier, where I think that's going to cause or trigger several court cases that are going to spring up because of this, because the opportunities to these companies just aren't there anymore. So that's lost revenue, and they're going to go after it.
Right. Okay, so Kate, on the other side of it, let's say like with a cell phone provider, like AT&T or Verizon, or any of the others out there, is this going to affect like a data plan, the usage of it? I mean, are they still going to be able to throttle back the speeds after you get to a certain point? I mean, how does that all affect things with net neutrality?
Well, the whole thing now is that with the new neutrality rules is that it's supposed to protect against throttling. And the whole, throttling has gotten to the point where people that I know, they have certain ways to try to combat this throttling on their own end. And it's pretty wild to see, really. I mean, you could just be using your phone or using any of your devices and all of a sudden just be able to tell that a company's throttling your usage. And that's definitely unfair. I think so. But we'll have to see. I definitely think that it is an ongoing process. I don't think it's going to end here. I think my main concern with net neutrality is how are the Internet of Things and this whole net neutrality thing going to go hand in hand? Because just if we're going to be putting more of our devices and making everything smart and connected to the web, are we going to be paying extra for that as well, besides just what we're buying into?
Yep, and I'll just go back just a little bit. A lot of people may not even know what we're talking about when it comes to throttling. just, let's say you have an unlimited plan. And what a lot of companies have done to this point, internet service providers, is let's say you get to a certain, let's say it's 10 gigs a month or 100 gigs a month or on your cell phone, 3 gigs a month. If you have an unlimited plan, what a lot of them would do is that once you got to that certain threshold, they would actually slow down the speed at which you could get stuff. So if you were able to stream things pretty good on February 15th, and on February 16th, you're like, why doesn't my Netflix work so well anymore? It is because the companies they analyze what you're using, and they slow down the internet connection to your place so it doesn't cost them as much to provide that service. So anyway, that's what throttling is. What's your take on the Internet of Things there, Marv?
I think she's right. I think it's the pricing structure is going to change. I think there's going to be, right now they kind of used to. I mean, when broadband first got introduced, there was that huge thing of you can only have a couple of devices attached to this thing, or even your cable. Sometime they'll say only 2 TVs.
Right.
I think that's kind of changed now, where they just accept that everybody's got 10 devices attached and 6 TVs in their house, and so they just let it go. But now that they've maybe lost some money on the other side, they may try to recover that on the consumer side, which is unfortunate for us because we're not the ones making the money on the other side. So now we're going to end up probably paying a little more, and I think you're going to see some of that happen. And the cell phones and the mobiles, they're already doing that. They already charge an extra $20 or $40 per line. Because you're going to use more time and more data.
Right.
So I think you're going to see maybe that model migrate towards the in-house landline type stuff.
So basically, you're thinking the new regs are basically going to cost us more, a couple dollars.
It probably will, I think.
Okay. And I guess if we're going to have, open internet. I guess I kind of look at it this way. If I'm going to pick something, most people have dropped their phones, to smart devices now. Landlines have gone by the wayside. Or, in my case, I have a VoIP phone at home. So I use the internet for my phone connection,
Right.
I now use the internet for almost all of my television viewing. The set-top boxes like the Roku and Apple TV, Chromecast. I mean, I use those almost exclusively now. So I suppose, they're losing money on the other side of things. They're going to have to gain it back someplace. We're doing these things as cost-cutting measures, but we're going to all end up paying a little extra more in the future anyway.
Yeah. And I'm more of I like the government out of things.
I'm the same way,
and,
yes.
The internet's not broken. The internet's working just fine right now, and things are going along. And it'll be interesting to see what this takes, which fork it takes now that they've gotten involved.
Right,
so
right.
It makes me nervous.
If you ask me, honestly, I think that if it's going to be this way, then definitely, especially with the younger generations getting older, I think that people having their own internet might be likely. If it's going to be to the point where you have to be controlled and you're constantly having to battle these companies about what you could do, I think that it's only a matter of time until someone makes a way for people to have their own cheap internet at home and private internet at home.
Is that even possible?
Is that sort of like when all these little mom and pop ISPs sprung up when AOL was just getting too cluttered and that sort of thing, where you had to use AOL and nobody liked it?
Right. I mean, you're seeing it now. Even on Kickstarter, there's been a couple of campaigns that I at least saw just for only like a personal cloud and things like that. Sure, that's not its own internet service, but it's going to evolve, and I definitely think that that's where we're going to go, is where people are going to have their own private, secure cloud and their own internet in the future, because it just can't stay the same way if it's going to be like this.
Yeah.
And if it ever ends up turning around the other way where for instance, Huffington Post contributor Marvin Amori actually blogged about this recently when the FCC actually approved the net neutrality rules. He wrote that basically if internet providers were able to exploit consumers, that they could do some pretty wild things. Like they could block your tweets.
Yep.
And if you're criticizing your cable or internet service provider online, they could basically like punish you or ban you from using that website, which sounds very dystopian. And there was a couple other ones, interesting things that he said might happen. He said that these internet service providers could block all peer-to-peer technologies, and even those used for software developers to share software, including patches like World of Warcraft, distribute open-source software, and in fact, Comcast, this is just for an example, has shown it would love to do this. That's what he said. So it's pretty interesting to see what might happen if this actually did happen, and we do have our internet controlled by these companies.
Well, and would peer-to-peer fall into, as we develop more Internet of Things? I mean, if we're talking to our thermostat and to our garage door openers and stuff, I mean, that all falls into this, doesn't it?
It does. It all falls into that.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of scary when you think about it, because, I'm just thinking that, like last week, I couldn't get into my car because my remote wouldn't work. I won't get into all the logistics behind that. But the key for my car door wasn't the same as the ignition. And I almost feel like this is the same type of thing that they can block you. There's the little hiccup in an electronic someplace or whatever, or that communication. All of a sudden you're stuck.
Yep.
You might not even be able to get into your house in the future if you're locked out of the internet.
Or if you get in, you can't turn off the security system, then you get arrested or
exactly
have to deal with that part.
Exactly. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that could happen. I mean, businesses that rely on the internet for processing credit cards. Imagine a business that, a busy restaurant or whatever that has to go back to cash for the evening or whatever. All kinds of crazy things could happen. So after the break, everybody, we will continue our discussion on net neutrality.
Right now, 25.
You're never more than a few minutes from a weather update here on Super Talk 1270.
Follow the Guru of Geek everywhere he goes. Post your comments or questions at thetechranch.com. Once again, your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And we want to thank all the people who listen to our wonderful program across the country and around the world on the Blueberry Network, on the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Of course, we're on iTunes, we're on the Roku, and our own app, Radio Pup. So all kinds of places you can enjoy the show live or after hours if you want to listen to us again in the future. And I know we're all going to want to listen to Marv and Katie later. So absolutely, yes. So anyway, we're talking about net neutrality, everybody, and what this is going to mean to us. And Katie, unfortunately, you weren't in our conversation in the studio here since you're over in New York. But I'm going to have Marv kind of bring us. We were talking about what the ruling has done as far as making the internet a utility, just like your electrical or your telecom or whatever. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that popped up, is that this added it to Title II, which governed, the telcos and that sort of thing. And so now it brings into local and state and federal jurisdiction, and now so when somebody wants to open a new ISP, or we were talking about Google specifically coming in and want to lay fiber everywhere, that's got to get past some of the public service commissions and some of the other groups that manage that. And so now it adds another layer of complexity there and passing to get through, and it's going to cost more money to put it in. And then the other side of it is, if you just want to use the existing infrastructure, you're still got to pay that person that owns the transport. So if in the case of like a cable company, you may have to lease time on their cable lines, or if you're doing a DSL or that sort of thing, you got to buy time from whoever owns the copper in the ground. So,
and all this stuff has to go through probably some type of government agency to be approved.
Yep.
Where in the past now companies could work together to make this happen. Now it's kind of regulated.
Yeah, and it'll turn into could turn into a bit of a dogfight when they start lobbying against each other.
Sure. So, Kate, one thing you had brought up before the break is the possibility of having your own, internet. As a futurist, how do you see that happening? Because right now, in my mind, I don't see how we get past the fiber in the ground or whatever. So, where do you see that going?
Could end up being part of nanotechnology. I think there's a lot of new things that we're exploring now. Even look at how we're storing data now. We're using light. You can store data on light. There's just a lot of different innovative ways that I think that are just surfacing now, that within the next 10 years we're going to go through so much change that it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, even look at robotics and everything. Just, it's going to be incredible. I definitely see some radical changes, and it's so funny when you're in the present. You just think, oh, wow, how could we ever move past having cable or internet service providers, running our internet for us? But it's only a matter of time, and sooner or later, maybe in the next 10 or 15 years, we'll look back on how we have things run today, and we'll be, we'll think, oh, wow, hey, remember those days?
Well, in fact, we could say that right now because there isn't anybody in this room that didn't have dial-up 15 years ago.
That's correct.
So
that's true.
And we were. In fact, I remember the day when I got a 300 baud modem, and I was like, "What am I going to do with all this speed?" Yeah. So
2 gig hard drive, and I'll never fill this thing up.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right about that. At CES, we actually looked at a technology called Li-Fi, which is light. They were using light to transmit network, and it was of course, incredibly fast. And that's interesting that you brought that up because it is possible that, if a person had a light station someplace that you could actually use that as some type of internet. And I'm not even so sure that it's in the light spectrum. Maybe somebody could, I don't know, off a satellite or something someplace, maybe just have that spectrum and use the light.
From giant lighthouses appeaing all over the U.S. that are just shooting light beams all over the place. Look like a rave or something.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? So it is
Pirate
interesting.
Radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Pirate Radio.
Yep. So moving on. Any other issues, Marv, maybe that you can see with the new net neutrality things?
I think anything we can dream up now is not even going to be close to what's going to happen once the lawyers get involved here and really start picking this apart. And they've all the big groups have already said they're going to do it. Comcast and Verizon and everybody have all said if this passes, we're going to court. So
we're going to be tied up in court for years, probably before
years.
Anything gets done. So okay, interesting. So Kate, do you feel that we talked about the Internet of Things a little bit. Do you feel that internet usage is just going to continue to explode? Going into the near future, or what are your thoughts there?
Yes, it is going to explode. It's going to be multiple times more than we're using it now. We're going to go through so much more data, and we already know that we're already talking about big data. We're talking about the Internet of Things. We're talking about the convergence of these technologies and this exponential growth. And I think that for us to be sitting here and saying that, it's going to stifle innovation by having a free and open Internet, I think that's just ludicrous, honestly. I don't know why that's like the one argument that if you Google, it's really funny. If you Google net neutrality stifles innovation, there is over 73,500 results on Google of people
I'm surprised it's only that many.
are. Yeah, if you Google it, you'll find so many people that are just in support of basically having this the net with the rules and everything. They basically just want you to pay for it, and I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I hope that something gets permanently resolved in the future, because otherwise it's just going to be going backwards.
Well, Kate, there's no doubt that there's always a certain segment of the population that will vote for anything. I remember putting out a prank news, whatever, on my blog here last April 1 about adding 15 days to the calendar. And we actually had people voting for, would you be in for or against? And only 70% said they would be for it. There was like 20% that needed more information. And literally 10% said, yes, we thought it was a good idea to add 15 more days to the calendar because, they could collect more taxes because of it.
Awesome.
That was a big deal. So there's always a certain segment that will always be in favor of whatever you want to throw out there. So, Jim, you want to say something?
I'm in favor of adding more days if they're all warm days.
And weekends,
if we can add them in the summer.
Yeah, and weekends would be great.
Let's make June 47 days long.
Exactly.
Works for me.
That sounds like a good idea.
I agree with that. So, Kate, anything else on net neutrality that you want to throw out there?
No, I think the scariest thing when it comes to net neutrality and everything we're talking about is the possibility that these companies can monitor everything that we do online and then sell everything that we're doing online to advertisers. And, I mean, thinking about having your privacy invaded and having these companies learn everything about you, just imagine if there were companies making money off of everything that you look in your browser history. I mean, that's crazy. It's a little scary to think about. So I think there has to be some resolutions when it comes to this. But I think in the end, it's going to be a free and open internet. And if not, then I think that the people are just going to speed up their own innovative ways to create an internet on their own. And it's going to happen.
So you're saying right now that they don't have the authority to actually spy on us, so to speak, unless you have adware or whatever on your computer that's doing that, which we all do anyway. So they're already kind of keeping track of us there. But this actually gives them even more authority to do this?
Correct. If they had these laws in effect and they got the way that they wanted it to be, essentially these companies could just come in and they could just monitor everything that you're doing, and down to every single data, how much time you go onto their websites, how you interact with, what you say to people, even your language, everything you type, everything can be monitored. And all that information will go to advertisers. And it's definitely scary to think about.
The tech geezer just put on his aluminum hat again, so he's scared of
Too late.
Yeah.
They're coming.
Anything else on net neutrality?
No, I think it's it'll be fun to see it play out, over the next couple of years probably, but I think it'll sway back and forth each direction, and as more information comes out, people will be able to form a little bit better opinion. I think right now it's just really vague. It's the language isn't all out, and nobody's really read the whole thing, and it'll be fun to see where it goes.
Maybe that's deliberate. Maybe they're just saying, the politicians are saying, well, let's give them something that'll shut them up.
Well, that's possible.
First part of that, yeah.
Yeah. So as of right now, I mean, these new regulations just came out, but is this going to affect us at all, Kate? I mean, I'm talking in the next 6 months or a year. Are we going to see any changes at all?
No, I don't think we're going to be able to noticeably see anything that would step out of the obvious to us. And that's the thing. That's why a lot of people don't really know about what's going on with this. I mean, even back in September, there was the battle for the net, and there was a lot of hype and people talking about, hey, let's stick together because this is what net neutrality is. And you'd be surprised. I mean, Marlo, not a lot of people know about what's happening right now with net neutrality.
I agree with that.
There has to be more education.
In fact, I would be willing to bet that most of the people listening to this program right now had no clue what net neutrality was until we started talking about it. Marv, any last thoughts?
No, I agree. I think it's going to get more out in the public and debated a lot more, I think, going forward.
All right, everybody. So my opinion would be that you want to go online, Google net neutrality, and learn a little bit about what's going on with this, because this is going to have a dramatic impact in our lives. Maybe not right now, because I think everything's going to stay about the same right now, but in the upcoming years, it's probably going to affect your wallet, and it's also going to affect your privacy. So, all right, everybody, until next week, we will see you again.
Change the laws of physics. Laws of physics. Laws of physics. Can it change the laws of physics? Laws of physics, Jim.
Oh, we come in peace. Shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill. We come in peace. Shoot to kill. Scotty, beam me up.
It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. It's worse than that. He's dead, Jim. Dead, Jim. Dead.
Well, it's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Not as we know it. Not as we know it. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Not as we know it, Captain.
ABC News. Super Talk 1270. Accurate news, stimulating talk. This is KLXX AM, Mandan, Bismarck.